There's a lot of construction, commercial real estate, investor-owned. The recovery there is going to take a lot more time.
David Katz, what's your point of view? I mean, do you think that these names have just in general come too far too fast, or could you really just pick sort of by region and by exposure?
We think it's pretty tough to do an analysis of the group now. They do have the overhangs. David mentioned the commercial real estate, which is out there. We also think they have to repay TARP. Many of them have to repay TARP, which means they're going to be doing significant equity raises, which are going to be dilutive. That's partially offset by the fact that these stocks are up so much that they're going to be able to offer stock at much better prices. We think the group is okay. We just don't think it's going to continue at the robust pace that it has for the last quarter, and we think that the big banks and the trust banks, which really haven't done a lot in 2010, are poised to be the leadership going forward.
David, are you worried about the fact that they haven't repaid TARP? I mean, the big banks have, and yes, they were able to do capital raises, but I'm still just curious as to whether we should be concerned that a lot of these smaller banks around the country haven't been able to.
We would not be worried about it, but you want to be cognizant that it's out there, which means they're going to have to do equity offerings, and when they do those equity offerings, it's going to be dilutive for the earnings on a go-forward basis. So it's going to slow down the fiery pace that these stocks have gone up.
You know, Craig, in terms of potential growth here, where, if there is any at all, where does it come from, given commercial real estate sort of doesn't move along very quickly? And I don't know a lot of other asset classes that these banks really play in a big way, at least in the past where they were playing in a big way.
Yeah, you're exactly right with that. Commercial real estate is going to be a very tough area to grow in, especially if you're focused on construction, investor-owned lending, especially if you're in the Southeast, Southwest. Well, where it's going to be good, we're actually more optimistic on C&I loan growth, especially related to certain industries. So if you're lending in the Michigan and Ohio auto sectors, if you're in Texas lending to the energy sectors, if you're in California with high exposure to technology, these are areas where there wasn't as much cash on balance sheet, where growth has come back faster, where they need credit. So these are areas that are going to recover faster. So there are some green spots on the lending front.
So my takeaway is, it's not all regionals, it's the region for the regionals.
You have to be selective when picking your stocks here.
All right. Thanks to Craig Siegenthaler and, of course, to David Katz.
All right, major media players trading at one-year highs this week. We're talking about the resurgent sector next, which is why we're glad we've got Mr. Faber, the media expert.
Well, we'll have a couple of real media experts as well. Speaking of resurgence, more on the auto industry. Big news from GM. You heard some of that from Phil LeBeau, and we're waiting on more information from Toyota. We're back in 2 minutes.
Asian Plantations primarily acquires properly zoned agricultural land in Sarawak, Malaysia for the development of palm oil.
Asian Plantations started out as an idea in 2007. My partner Graham Brown and I found our first piece of land about 100 kilometers outside of the port of Bintulu in Sarawak and set about developing that, and we've continued to expand since then. We see ourselves as an innovative agricultural company in Southeast Asia. We apply the latest Western management techniques to what we think is sometimes a bit of a sleepy business. We've brought in GPS technology in terms of mapping and payment to contractors. We've brought in satellite mapping, very extensive green planting techniques, for example, the use of leguminous ground cover to reduce chemical weeding. So we're really trying to bring in the best-of-breed operating practices into our business. At heart, we're an agricultural development company. We are buying undeveloped land that is environmentally zoned and properly titled and bringing that into full production. That's where we see the most value creation in agriculture today. Compared to other plantation companies, I would argue we incorporate a heavy degree of technology, GPS mapping, very innovative milling processes and systems that we're developing now in terms of how we empower the workers, in terms of how we work with the staff on the ground. I would argue we bring a degree of Western and advanced operating procedures. I believe Asian Plantations is an attractive investment opportunity, largely because we're focused on early stage development. We're acquiring properly zoned but undeveloped pieces of land which we are bringing into full production. We believe this is the sweet spot of agricultural investing.
CNBC.com is your Earning Central destination. Free 24/7 access to the tools you need to make the most of the numbers before you make your move. Earning Central, only on the fastest growing business news website, CNBC.com.
Begin this hour with a 1-2 punch of breaking news. On Capitol Hill, former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan being questioned about the causes of the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. Mary Thompson following that story for us. In Chicago, Phil LeBeau with GM's just released financial results. And Phil, let's start with you.
David, we are listening to the GM conference call just beginning. The company will be filing its 10Q and 10K reports later today with the SEC. And essentially, the company has got a couple of important things going on today. One, it is announcing that it has finished fresh start accounting. That's important as the company completes another important step as it prepares to go public, potentially by later this year. The company announcing also today, once again, it plans to repay all of the money that it has borrowed from the U.S. federal government as well as the Canadian government by June. That's a process that they've been going through over the last couple of months. We've seen a couple of payments made already. They plan to have it completely paid off by June. We're going to hop onto this conference call. We'll have more updates as the news comes out regarding what they've put into these reports and the company's outlook over the next several months. But in the meantime, let's go to Mary Thompson, who is in Washington. Mary?
Thank you, Phil. In his testimony, prepared remarks delivered earlier today to the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission and in the following Q&A, Greenspan basically has defended his as well as the central bank's role in the events leading up to the housing crisis as well as the subsequent financial crisis. Greenspan blaming low long-term rates, not monetary policy, for fueling the housing bubble. He also defends the Fed's actions, saying it did what it could as a regulator to rein in subprime lending. The real villains in all of this crisis, he says, appear to be
making government bigger, and we can look at Europe, we can look all around the world. It doesn't work.
That's just not true. First of all,
it isn't deeper and longer than average?
No. The recession has been longer, but it's not because of President Obama. Remember, the recession started in December 2007. It's now 2010. The recession has technically ended, according to the economists, but that's because of the investment that was started by the government. If you look at the 2 million jobs that have been created or saved, according to the Council of Economic Advisors, that's because of this stimulus money, because of the Recovery Act. You can't say you put billions of dollars out there into the economy, it doesn't have any impact.
All right, we're going to pause there.
But Keith,
Dan, you got to start, so Keith gets to finish. I got to let him finish because I try to be fair. You get a bookend, so if you go first, you don't go last. Gentlemen, we'll have you back, though, for a redux. And we got breaking energy news in a minute.
That's what it says right there, in fact. That's right. Tell me about crude oil.
Crude oil is down, but we will see.
Okay.
We'll see if we've got enough of it.
Yep.
That's the big question. We're going to have the numbers, an immediate reaction in 2.5 minutes.
As a relative newcomer to the palm oil industry in Malaysia, Asian Plantations is able to bring a young, dynamic approach, incorporating the latest technological developments to increase productivity and reduce costs.
Technology is a critical component of our business model. If you look at the plantations themselves, we use GPS mapping to control and monitor the quality of contractor work. We use satellite mapping to monitor the density of our palms per hectare. These are critical components for the productivity of those fields over their lifespan over 25 years. And in terms of the milling process, we are bringing into place one of the most advanced forms of milling called vertical sterilizer technology. So across the whole spectrum where we operate, from the fields to the processing, technology is an important part of our model.
Graham Brown, a co-founder and joint CEO, was interviewed recently in Sarawak, Malaysia.
Our mill is one of the first vertical sterilizer mills in Sarawak. It's a very advanced and developed technology which is able to give us a much better performance than other mills. Cressa's success is based on the very good management team of people that we have and the best practices that we've put into place. We use extensive GIS technology, mapping our farms so that we can see the yields that we're going to get in the future.
Malaysia is widely regarded to be out of land. If you look at the three main palm oil growing parts of Malaysia, the peninsula, and then on the island of Borneo, Sabah, and Sarawak, the last part of Malaysia where there is some title environmentally zoned land is in Sarawak. My partner, Graham Brown, has been based in Sarawak for almost the last 15 years. So our on-the-ground presence gives us an edge over others that are looking for those parcels. Our main goal is to bring the fields we have into production as quickly as possible. Our strategy is to continue to find new pieces of land that suit our demanding requirements.
The NYMEX, we're looking at oil prices that are slightly lower right now after the Department of Energy's report on inventories. Crude supplies grew greater than expected by 2 million barrels. Crude supplies were up 2 million barrels in the past week. Gasoline supplies were down more than most of the consensus average forecast, down 2.5 million barrels, down 2.5 million barrels. The expectation was for a decline of about 1.5 million barrels, but it's still less of a decline than what we saw from the American Petroleum Institute data. They reported a 3 million barrel decline yesterday. Meanwhile, we're looking at distillate fuel supplies that are up 1.1 million barrels. Again, most analysts were looking for a decline there in distillate fuel supplies. We are looking at crude prices right now, Aaron and David, that are down about 45 cents. Again, in consolidation mode, most of the analysts say.
Thank you very much, Sharon. We appreciate it. So we'll keep a close eye on that. In the meantime, here's some of the other headlines at 10:31 here, 7:32 on the West Coast. So far, markets are mixed. We're down about 32 points for the Dow. NASDAQ, though, did turn positive over the past hour. Dell, Win, Baidu, the Chinese search engine, and Cisco are among the winners there. GM, in the meantime, says it could post a profit this year. This came after they reported a $4.3 billion net loss for the second half of last year. And according to a Business Roundtable survey, more CEOs plan to add jobs than cut them over the next 6 months, although the magnitude of
big fees from it.
But to your point, and when we talk about this whole financial regulatory reform, those sorts of questions aren't addressed. This sort of, we're going to have a clearinghouse for derivatives.
Right.
Exactly what goes on it and whether there is a limit, and a regulator should have any stay in a limit over what is a product that is worthwhile and deserves to exist versus one which isn't.
Yep, and then you get back to the basic how opaque so many of the things that go on at investment banks are.
Yeah.
Now Goldman's giving us some details on some of these transactions. You're talking billions of dollars that were at stake, and of course people have no real idea in terms of getting any granularity when you're dealing with a bank like a Goldman, or for that matter a Lehman or a Bear.
But you know what? It's hard to know what goes on in the mind of God.
You keep coming.
I can't stop. I mean, here's the deal.
Lloyd Blankfein is not a deity. I've met the man.
I am sure Lloyd Blankfein sometimes laughs at that comment he made and sometimes cries, but nonetheless, he made it.
Yeah, but it was made
forever.
in jest on the way to the elevator. The reporter totally screwed him.
That all may be true. It still is the thing that will live in infamy, unfortunately.
All right, well.
Fair or not fair, it is what it is. Kind of funny. All right.
We got 6 stocks in 60 seconds on the other side of the break.
And there's still time to vote in today's street poll about Alan Greenspan. Is he to blame for the crisis? Yes, partly, or no. The results so far in 2 minutes.
Talking about trading gold stock, and if you take a look at the stock reaction.
Hong Kong markets also hit record highs early in the session.
Asian Plantations recently listed on AIM in London and is already embarking on a growth and acquisition strategy.
Well, we were very excited to have listed the business at the very end of 2009 on the alternative investment market of the London Stock Exchange. It was a great opportunity to bring new investors into the story, raise some more capital, which allows us now to continue to grow our land bank and expand our activities in Sarawak, Malaysia. I believe Asian Plantations is an attractive investment opportunity, largely because we're focused on early stage development. We're acquiring properly zoned but undeveloped pieces of land which we are bringing into full production. We believe this is the sweet spot of agricultural investing. We're very prudent with shareholders and investors' capital. In terms of cost, we negotiate extremely hard on the land purchases. We monitor our spending. We ensure that we have high palm density, approximately 138 palms per hectare, to make sure our fields have very high productivity during their 25-year lifespan. So through all aspects of the business, from land acquisition to development to management practices, we treat every dollar as if it is our own. The edible oil industry, of which palm oil is the leading supplier of edible oils to the marketplace, has grown phenomenally over the last 25 years, approximately 4.2% per annum demand growth increase every single year for the last 25 years. As long as more humans are on the planet and as long as incomes continue to rise in emerging markets, I think the end market where we sell into will remain very strong as we develop our fields and bring them into production. Over the long term, we want to be one of the most productive, innovative palm oil plantation companies in the world.
You're watching CNBC.
In today's street poll, we asked what you thought about Alan Greenspan, whether he was to blame for the crisis or not. Now, we had thousands of responses, literally, to this. A lot. I think it may be our highest so far. Wow. 40% of you blame Alan Greenspan. 39% of you partly Alan Greenspan. 21% say no. So Alan Greenspan himself said he was right 70% of the time and wrong 30% of the time.
79% of people who basically say it was at least partly his fault, if not fully his fault.
Right.
You know what? Our viewers are there's sage wisdom, I think.
Yeah.
I really do.
All right, time for 6 and 60. Six stocks in 60. I guess I'm kicking it off today. So let's go with stock number 1, Netflix, downgraded to equal weight from a buy. So that would be to a neutral, which is where the market's going overall. Down 2% on that. That was at Barclays. Chipotle upgraded to neutral from a sell at Buckingham, which I guess is better than a sell. And Las Vegas Sands downgraded to do nothing at all from buy at UBS, citing price.
Yeah, it moved up a lot. We heard Matt Nesto on that earlier. Essex Property downgraded to neutral from buy at Janney Capital. Finish Line upgraded to equal weight from underweight at Morgan Stanley. So exciting. Express Scripts, Carrison Company, boosting its price target on the stock from 108 to 125. They already have a buy in the stock, and the market could care less. All right, you see those Greek bond yields?
Panic.
Highest they've been, higher than the January panic on the 10-year. We are now at 7.18%. You heard Mark Chandler talking about it earlier, that short end of the curve also. Greek market down 3%, European stocks at lows. Keep an eye on it. Doesn't seem to be having a large impact, broadly speaking.
Right. It's interesting, though, when you look at the history, as you said, 160 or 80 years of independence.